We just finished watching the Oscars literally minutes ago. Now let's talk about it.
Is it Kenaf?
We're about to find out.
Hi, this is Karan from LA.
And this is Alex from LA in the same room as
Oh
Karan.
my gosh. It's Oscar Sunday, and we're here. Well, welcome to Movies That Shaped Us. We're two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but we're both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a filmmaker who shaped our love of movies, although today is a special episode, like Alex mentioned, so we'll be talking about the Oscars and actually sharing our top three movies of 2023, which we have not done so far because we waited for this moment. So, with that, what did you think of the Oscars?
Yeah, so just for new time listeners, Karan and I are big fans of the Oscars. It's like a love or hate it thing. We watch it every year. Sometimes, you watch it because you hate watch it. Sometimes you watch it because it's great. And we actually have an episode on the movies that shape the love of our Oscars
Yeah.
obsession. But I actually thought the award show, so I kind of break it down into two categories. One is sort of the winners and do I think the right people won? And then the second one is just about the show itself. And I think both honestly were great tonight. I think the show was great and the winners are great. What about you? High level.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, this was a solid show. And I guess I shouldn't say solid because last year was sort of the solid show, because they were coming back from the slap Oscars and trying to not, rock the boat and keep things going. And they did that. But I think this time they actually stepped it up, I would say, from a show standpoint. And then the winners also, I think everybody who won, I would say, was pretty deserving. There's some, surprises here and there, but for the most part, I'm not mad with any win, I would say. But the show was very enjoyable and yeah, excited to get into it.
Yeah, I think you're right. This was, last year was sort of the first year coming after the Will Smith thing. And
Yeah.
I think they tried to go back to some things in the past
Yeah.
that really worked well. Like, for example, I loved the fact they brought past actor winners on stage to present, to do personal messages and present the award. I thought that was great
Hmm.
to have other actors from the community recognizing their fellow actors and especially coming up on the stage when the winners would come up and sort of the all the past winners could congratulate them. I thought that was a really nice touch and I think that flowed really well with the show.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, as an Oscar obsessive, I can't tell you how many times I've watched YouTube clips of when they used to do this. And it sort of adds to the meaning of the show, where people that you've admired, people who won, are up there on stage talking about you. It means something. You can see, in the nominees' eyes. And then when the winner gets up there and they have this moment with all of them up there, it's pretty special. So I'm so happy that they brought that back. And they did it smartly, where in the 2000s, they would do this and show the clips and announce the nominees. It was so long that it kind of felt a little draggy. This didn't feel like that to me. And also, they only did it for the acting awards, which
Right.
is sort of, I think, what they did last time too, which I think was very smart, much welcome change. So I love that too.
Yeah, and one thing that this helped do, and I can't remember if this was last year or the year before where we complained about this, but there was a lot of star wattage on stage. Like
Yeah.
again, I can't remember if it was last year's Oscars. We felt it just was like not enough
Yeah.
stars,
Yeah.
just the barely anyone there. It's like everyone was purposely deciding not to be there. Maybe they're afraid they're gonna get slapped or something. But this year it was great to see, oh, these old no, winners and nominees and like the wattage was up tonight. And when it is
Exactly.
quote unquote Hollywood's biggest night, you want
Yeah.
a lot of that star power there. And I was very happy to see
Yeah.
everyone on stage.
Totally. Totally. I mean, we as audiences love that to watch it on from TV, but also you can feel that in the room, because
Exactly.
they admire these people too. So when you have like, I don't know, Sally Field up there or whoever whom you've grown up, you can see that in Margot Robbie's face or Emma Stone being really, really moved
Right.
by Sally's kind of intro to her. So yeah, that was just amazing. I would say the pacing overall of the show also felt quite good. Like nothing felt draggy to me and kept moving, but it also didn't feel rushed. What did you think about the pacing?
Yeah, I agree. I think they did a really good job of spacing out like the bigger moments,
Yeah.
spacing out the bigger awards. And it kind of, I think it was like about 3 hours of a show
Yeah.
roughly, which 3 hours, maybe 3 hours, 10 minutes, which for the Oscars is very short, but
Yeah.
it didn't feel rushed. Like I felt
No.
I got all the right minutes or things I wanted to see. And it was also great that, as I've said on previous episodes, I think you are too, like a big fan of the montages.
Yeah.
And they did keep each best picture got a little, a short, maybe 20 to 30-second montage of the
Yeah.
film, which I loved. And I also really liked the Run True montage they had, which is about the stuntmen. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was great. I just love the Oscars when they show old movies and they go
Yeah,
back
yeah,
and
yeah.
show all these old stunts from like Bond films in past. The Matrix was in there, Indiana Jones. So it was
Mm-hmm.
great to kind of go back and see these old movies and the stuntmen that put
Mm-hmm.
it on. So I like that they highlighted that, but they didn't go overboard with
Yeah.
the montages.
Yeah. I think that's the key thing, which is that this show works because it has to be right balance between tradition and what are we doing now.
Right.
And it felt reverent to the movies, the tradition of movies and making movies, but it also felt very celebratory of what's happening today. And it wasn't making fun of, the thing. Because
Right.
in the past, this had become a thing, right? That, oh, nobody's watched these movies, so why are we even here? Or, I mean, there's a little bit of movies that are too long, but that's fine because it's also true. But other than that, and also sometimes it goes too overboard, where it's too self-congratulatory or it gets too political, where suddenly it's not about the movies anymore, it's about something else, And I
Right.
felt that they struck a good tone. And it's obviously a, popularity contest or self-congratulatory contest, whatever you want to call it. But we love that when people are happy in the room, and you felt that like people were moved or genuinely happy to be there. There were so many teary-eyed speeches, which doesn't always happen actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so then, and speaking of speeches, then I know you're a connoisseur of Oscar speeches, and like you just said earlier, you go back and watch old speeches
Yeah.
on YouTube constantly. Were there any speeches that stood out to you of like a moment that maybe in 3 or 4 years you'll be going back and looking at on YouTube?
Yeah. I think I'll be honest, and this is probably the one surprise, right? That Emma Stone won and Lily Gladstone didn't win. And I was rooting for Lily Gladstone because I thought she was amazing.
Yeah,
She
me too.
is kind of the heart of that movie. So it was a bit of a, surprise. Not really a surprise, but a bit of a, downer, I suppose, that Emma Stone won. But she's very deserving. She did a great job. And I think her speech and her whole kind of shock and just being totally moved, with her body shaking and her dress ripped and all of that, like that's very memorable. This is why we love the Oscars. So I think that moment is going to stay in my mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing because a lot of the times for me, the best speeches are the ones that are I don't want to say unscripted because I'm sure
Yeah.
she had prepared remarks, but you can tell that the speech giver is either surprised that they won or just still so overwhelmed with emotion that the speech feels more genuine. And definitely Emma up there, where several times she mentioned her dress was broken and was showing it. And then and again, I love that like all the other actors are up there, and like Charlize Theron was there trying to fix her dress. Like that's cool
Yeah.
to see that. So I think that speech for me definitely stood out a lot too. I liked Robert Downey Jr. just because
Yeah.
I just get moved with his story of, I was a big fan of his in the 90s before he then went to prison and he was sort of washed up and absolutely had no career. And just to see him come back, obviously,
Mm.
first commercially through the Marvel movies and make as much money and have commercial success. And it's just great to see him kind of cap that off with artistic recognition for
Yeah.
him as a great actor, who, again, I've been following since the 90s when I first kind of was obsessed with Downey Jr. So it's just nice to see him get this achievement as well. So those are the two that probably stood out for me.
Yeah, I would agree. He was great too. And even though this was like a fait accompli,
It
like,
was.
at the same time, it's so great to see him kind of get that deal, like you said. Speaking of that, I will say, if it's just kind of a funny thing to say, which is that the downer of the whole telecast was, I think, Oppenheimer winning Best Picture, because it was so expected that, and maybe also because Emma Stone's win was such a kind of punch in the room,
Because it was unexpected.
unexpected, and you could see the emotion in the room roaring. So after that, it's sort of hard to kind of come back to an award that everybody knows. Even somebody who doesn't care about the Oscars didn't was not, listening to a million podcasts the way I was leading up to this moment, knew that it's going to win, right? So that's a bit of a downer. And suddenly it was like, oh, the show is over. So I guess there's no way out of it. But that to me sort of felt, from a speech standpoint or a win standpoint, like a bit of a downer, I would say.
Yeah, I think I mean, I respect Chris, who, because there are three producers on the picture, and he was
Right.
one of them. The other one of the other two was his wife, and he let his wife speak.
Yeah.
And then Charles Roven, who was a longtime producing partner of Nolan, speak. And because Chris had just won for best director, he chose not to say anything, which maybe if he went up there and said something could have ended the night at least with a star. I mean, no shame to like his wife or Charles Roman, but people know who Chris Nolan is. He could have
Yeah.
said something at the end, though. I actually really liked his speech too when he said that moment of like, oh, we're only 100 years into this art form, and I'm honored to be a part of that. I
That
thought
was
that was a really
nice.
nice, humbling
Yeah.
sort of a moment, and which was a cool line, but maybe he should have said something. I don't know. You're right. Like the show sort of just ended,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Although I don't know, him saying something would have helped that. It was more about just the movie
Oh,
winning,
okay, okay.
like as opposed to who kind of stood up there and talked. Then I guess the other aspect of the show is, to me, it's a live show, right? Like pacing and speeches and such that we've talked about is important, but a big kind of element of the live show, other than pacing, is just how the production is, right? And I felt that the stage and the design of it and how things moved was just spectacular. I thought they did such a great job of using the stage and transporting you in the moment. Once again, kind of elegant but sort of reverent to the
Hmm.
art of movies, but not hitting it over the head. It just felt very tastefully done. Yeah.
Yeah, I also love the production design, the directing. There was
Yeah.
very few sort of like mistakes in terms of
Yeah.
where they were cutting
Felt
to.
pretty
It
seamless.
it did. Yeah, no, I thought that was very classy and very, very well done from that perspective. What about things that didn't work for you from a show standpoint? And then we could talk briefly about the awards too. But
Yeah.
did anything not work for you?
I mean, I think we both talked about this as we were watching. The In Memoriam was not well done. I think having dancers up there is just not tasteful in my mind. It should be about the people who've passed away and kind of focus on them. And, also the music choice was kind of odd. I mean, Andrea Bocelli and his son obviously are like legendary singers. So it's on one hand great to have them, but at the same time, I don't know. Something about that just didn't feel right to me. It just didn't feel revelatory or moving the way. I mean, I've watched the segment in past years and been moved to tears, by how they put it together and just thinking about these great people who are no longer with us. None of that happened this time for me.
Yeah, not to be morbid, but it's always usually my favorite part of the show. Not favorite in terms of I'm
Right.
happy that these people pass away, but it's just a good moment to reflect on, the fact that lose so many great artists all the time, and
Right.
there were a lot of big names
Yeah.
in that list, but definitely it just doesn't work. I prefer just to see the full screen of the actor or the director or the writer or the producer who would have you on the screen and not see anything in the theater. And you even made this, I don't know, say joke, but this comment that song, at least for me,
Yeah.
is so tied to Step Brothers because it's a song that they sing at the Catalina wine mixer. That
That's
that
all
was
I could think of.
the only thing I could think of is Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly singing this song at the Catalina wine mixer. Which I don't know if that would have made this a better in memoriam if they were up there doing this, and
No.
Prestige Worldwide would have produced this thing. But yeah, that did not work for me at all. And I'll say too, as much as I love Al Pacino, that was very awkward at the end. I felt that he's an old man now, and I don't know if he should have been the guy at the end to have the energy and the gravitas to give away the final award. He seemed a little confused. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that. I mean, it doesn't matter what he does and how old he is and what have you. It's his work and who he is speaks for it.
I
So,
mean, I love
and
Al.
it's kind of endearing, even to the
Okay,
flubs and everything. So I don't mind that. It's fine. I guess we should mention musical performances. Not all these songs are great, and that's always the case, but I will say from a production standpoint, they were all produced very well, all of
true.
them.
Yes.
But then the Ken song just was a total kind of fire on stage. Like, he did amazing. The whole production was incredible. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine being in that room, and the only way I could feel that was just looking at Greta and Margot's faces. Like, they were just completely in awe, and Ryan killed it. I mean, it was so great.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Like, I think that was the highlight of the show from a production
Yeah.
standpoint. I mean, doing something live like that
Yeah.
for Ryan Gosling and pulling that off, incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
Dancing, singing. The song's fun too, but just the
Yeah.
production value of that
Yeah.
was amazing. And you could tell in the room that thing killed, which,
Yeah.
makes the people at home watching
Totally.
help that you get that energy.
Totally. So important. But this again, right? It shows that they got actual people who know what live TV is. And you see those chops. In the past years, they've gotten people who made movies or TV shows to make like a live show, and it doesn't work. It's a different muscle. And I'm so glad that they have the right team. So that was great. I think Jibby was good to find,
Yeah.
solid, I would say. There were some awkward moments. The Downey joke in the monologue was sort of went on for too long, and some of it just didn't land. But overall, like pretty good. Uh, I think it's time, maybe now that we are out of the slap season and we've had sort of 2 years that went, pretty good, and this was actually pretty great. I think it's time to switch it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought he did a solid job. You know what you want out of a host to not take too much of the spotlight away from the show, but still do a serviceable job. But yeah, I'd like to have them find someone else
Yeah.
next year. Maybe Jimmy can come back in a couple more years.
Yeah. Maybe Joy Coy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That he would do a great job. He killed it in the Golden Globes. He was so good.
By killed it, you mean he got killed?
I mean, yeah, his career got
Right,
killed. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I guess moving from the show in the awards itself, I mean, we already kind of gave this out away, which is that we weren't upset or surprised really by anything except for one, perhaps Emma. But any other award winners that, I don't know, surprised you or are memorable or stood out or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe this will be a boring answer, but this is one of those years, which hasn't happened in a long time, where the film that I personally wanted to win,
Right.
personally felt deserved to win, and also was sort of had all the momentum, so it was going to win, ended up winning.
Right.
And those things rarely cross, or at least in a long time, it doesn't. Usually it's like a movie I love that doesn't even get nominated, or maybe it's nominated, but no way it's going to win. So I just like when that happens. It's been a while, and I will talk potentially more about Oppenheimer later in this episode or in a future episode. But I was glad to see, those filmmakers and especially Christopher Nolan, who have been followed for a long time, just get recognized finally by the Academy. And even younger folks like Ludwig just having 2 Oscars now. That
Mhm.
score for Oppenheimer just amazing. So I just like it. I personally like seeing when films sweep.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I like the momentum of that, and I think the film deserved it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there hasn't been a movie like this, which is, a box office juggernaut, great story told, brilliantly acted, all the departments working in concert. It's sort of why the Oscars were made, if you read about the Warners or Louis B. Mayer and all these people who kind of constituted this thing, that was always the dream, right? That you have a movie that pushes artistic bounds, but is also loved by the people. And that has not been happening for a long, long time, both of those things. So it's kind of great to see that. And I think this movie is going to be remembered. So that's great. But what I also love is that, of course, this had the momentum and took home a bunch of very well-deserved prizes. I also love that they spread the wealth a little bit, you know. It's good that Zone of Interest is not just a international or foreign language, whatever we're calling it now, award winner, which obviously it deserves, but I'm very happy that it has another Oscar. Anatomy of a Fall, again, a great movie, has an Oscar. Poor Things, the departments it won in totally deserved. So I think they spread the wealth in a good way, I would say. Holdovers is an Oscar winner. Dewine, a great speech. He
Correct.
killed it, has
Mm-hmm.
swept the entire season. So I love that. I love both aspects. I love spread the wealth a little bit, but I also love like a dominant player. But I don't like too much dominance either. I don't want King of the World. So,
Oh, don't knock Titanic. Come on.
well, I'm knocking James.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes.
Don't even knock him either, actually. But no, I think that's a great point, and
Yeah.
I just think that the awards, even though they were expected, I was
Yeah.
still satisfied. It wasn't a boring Oscars
No.
because these wins again were so deserved, and the Emma Stone winning over Lily Gladstone was a huge shock.
Yeah.
In a way, if they put that earlier in the show, it might have made me feel more on edge about like, wow, anything can happen tonight. Because that was the only one that I was genuinely surprised that it
Yeah.
happened. So it happened basically the second to last award. So it's like, okay, well, it's not like this is going to give Marty any momentum or
No.
even the picture, but that was I'm happy. I'm very happy with the award. So I was surprised that Leo wasn't there.
I mean, he wasn't nominated,
I know,
so
but do you think he should
yeah.
support Lily
I know
Gladstone?
he's been doing that the whole season, so yeah, I guess maybe he should, or maybe he was pissed because he was like, maybe I wanted a nomination at
Yeah,
least, and they didn't do that. So
yeah. The
maybe sad.
Academy doesn't like him.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
Maybe. Although I've heard many, many people who I know in my own life who just didn't like the performance.
really.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you wanted to say on the Oscars?
No, I'm very happy that it's over because this has been it's going on for so long. But I'm also, I mean that in a facetious, but also in a genuine way, because it was such a great, year for movies, and it's great to see that it didn't end, in a damn squib or like a bomb. That not that the Oscars are going to be the defining moment. The movies are great. The year was great.
Right.
Everybody knows that. We all say that. But it's great to kind of move on from this year with a great ceremony, with good people winning for the most part. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, though I guess the WGA is still the WGA awards are still have not
Oh
happened
my
yet. So we're not
gosh.
over that. We're still there. Well, we should do a live episode after WGAs and yeah, that's because of the strike. They
Right.
delayed it. But no, I definitely second everything you say. It was an amazing year in movies, and I think the Oscars perfectly capsulated that in the show and then also in the awards that they gave.
Yeah.
I think this will go down as again one of the best years in movies in a long
Yeah.
time, 2023. And the show I think reflects that in a solid way.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. All right. So let's get into our top threes. Do you want to start with your top three movie of 2023?
Sure. So my number three top movie, favorite movie, however we want to categorize this from last year was How to Blow Up a Pipeline.
Now, this is a film directed by Daniel Goldhaber, starring Ariella Barar, Christine Forsythe, and Lucas Gage. The IMDb plot summary: a crew of environmental activists plot a daring plan to disrupt an oil pipeline.
This is a movie that I saw really early in the year. I think February or March. For me, was just a very solid sort of heist slash thriller. Yeah, so yes, this movie has a political message that is around a gang of younger kids taking activism in their own hands by blowing up this oil pipeline to send a message to the oil companies and help save the environment. But beyond that, I think that the movie is just a very, very well made film. Feels a lot to me like a serious Ocean's 11, getting the team together. The thriller aspects of it, I thought were just incredibly well done by the director in terms of the tension that was building. You're not really sure whether they will pull this off, and then they do a very good job in the movie as well because it's a gang of people who don't actually know each other. In the beginning of the movie, they get together around this plot to blow up this pipeline in Texas, and the movie slowly reveals as the film goes on the motivations, which are all different from the characters, the backgrounds of the characters. And I think the structure of this movie is just a really taut heist thriller, which is the genre that I really like. And yes, the politics also I thought were powerful and aligned with my personal worldview. But a lot of times movies can be politically in my wheelhouse, but just not be very well made films. And I thought this just did a great job of doing both. So it really struck a chord with me, and I've seen it several times since it came out, and definitely one of my top movies of last year. What did you think of it?
Yeah, no. You're the one who actually told me about it. But I knew of it, but I think I heard from you how much you loved it, and then I checked it out. And yeah, it's like you said, like the politics of it aside, it's just so well made and it's sort of a nail-biting thriller, which is, I think, important for all quote unquote issue-based movies. Like you look at Spotlight or what have you, like I want that from a movie like this, that it's entertaining in the sense that it keeps you interested and glued, but at the same time gives you the message and is very clear in terms of character motivations and where people are going, what they are fighting for, and does it in a way that doesn't feel preachy,
Right.
and you're kind of in it with them for the story. And that you can draw your own conclusions and think about, would I do it this way or not? But that's kind of the point, I think, that it sparks this conversation. And you can only get to that place when it feels authentic and is driven, in a propulsive kind of way, which this movie totally is. So yeah, happy to see this one on the list.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that I think the movie doesn't necessarily take a stance in and of itself per
Yeah.
se of whether this is a good thing that the characters are doing or not. And, several of the characters, do face severe consequences from the law about what they're doing. So it's not like they're going like unpunished in the world of the film.
Yeah.
But again, raises these questions, but doesn't in such a way that you're not thinking the whole time about what you would do or what the movie's trying to say. You're just like, wow, what's going to happen? Like, are they going to do this or not? Oh
Right.
no, this thing's falling over. Are they going to mix the bomb fluids correctly, or are they going to blow their hands off? And it's like all of that. And there's a couple plot twists in it too that I think they do a really good job of as well. So it's just a really taut thriller that I was also impressed that one of the actresses in it, wrote the screenplay as well.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that both her career and the career of this director can continue on, because I think this is one of their first films, if not
Yeah.
their first film.
Yeah.
So that was really great film. Folks might not have heard about it. It's one of a small movie that again came out earlier this year and is now available to stream. So I would definitely recommend checking it out.
Okay, my number three is something very different. My number three is The Holdovers, directed by Alexander Payne, starring Paul Giamatti, Deva Joy Randolph, and newcomer Dominic Sessa. Quick log line on the movie. A cranky history teacher at a prep school is forced to remain on campus over the holidays with a grieving cook and a troubled student who has no place to go. And that's sort of what the movie is. It's a cozy, holiday movie, but it's done by people who are masters at what they do. It's Alexander Payne and it's a great cast. And I think this is one of those movies which I think is greater than the sum of his parts. Where on the surface, like I said, it's a simple movie that just, you know, gives you the holiday feel, that's cozy and is joyful, and all these characters and their quirks and in their loneliness and such are have their own things that are going on. But it leaves you with something a lot more powerful and not super underlined, which I think is a message of kindness and saying that everybody has their own issues. You cannot really judge people. You have to really get to know them and understand them. Even the people who are curmudgeon, even the people who on the face of it might be annoying or opposed to your views, you actually don't know what's going on with them. You have to sort of meet them where they're at, and through that, unexpected relationships can be born, unexpected turns in each other's lives can take place. So I love all of that. And then on top of it, the movie is set in the 70s, which again could have gone horribly wrong, I think, but is done with just so much deftness and has a light touch to it. It's not acerbic the way a lot of Alexander Payne movies can be, which we both enjoy. I think this is a lot sweeter, but there are shades of that in this movie. They're just not underlined, and I don't know. I kind of like that. This movie has gotten a little bit of criticism that it doesn't have more to say, or it maybe should have pushed harder, but I kind of like a director like him, kind of like PTA, one of my other favorite directors, making movies like Licorice Pizza and such, which are maybe not, overloaded with like a million things like his, Magnolia is or what have you, right? So I like these directors from that time growing older and maybe being more comfortable in their craft and what they have to say, perhaps, and letting people take what they want to take. So yeah, this is one of my favorites. This is the movie I've seen several times. I really don't watch movies several times in the same year, but this is one that I have.
Yeah, I've actually watched this twice myself, and this is
Yeah.
actually my number two movie of the year.
Yeah.
So we can continue to talk about the holdovers a little bit. Yeah, as folks know from our Alexander Payne episode, I am also a big fan, like Karan is, of this director, and I think this is him just hitting a home run in the area that is he's very good at. This is his bread and butter, and he knocks it out of the park on this. It's I think you hit it the nail on the head. It's about kindness, it's about empathy, and that's why it works really well as a holiday movie because it's
Hmm.
really thinking outside of yourself and trying to be in someone else's shoes and understand where everyone else is coming from, which is that holiday spirit. I think is a lot of part of that, like finding love and forgiveness and kindness in other people. And this movie just does a fantastic job at it. And I just really just want to call out that the acting, like Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessna, are just incredible in these roles, especially Giamatti, who has been in Payne movies before.
Hmm.
And I mean, obviously, Sideways, just an incredible performance. But in this one, I really do think this is the perfect encapsulation of what he does so well, which is create a curmudgeon character who is kind of a jerk that you kind of don't want to like, but he provides some side of his character where you can't help but just kind of fall in love with his curmudgeoniness. And then in this movie, especially, you slowly reveal his past and you understand why he's still at this school for so many years and what he went through to put him in the mood that he's basically in, where he is this curmudgeon classics teacher. So I think they do a great job of over the course of the movie revealing that. And the same thing with Dominic Sessa's character too. You realize, he's kind of a jerk kid who's lashing out at the other kids, and you realize that's because of his background, because of what's going on with his dad and his parents, and it's just really great how they slowly unveil these layers, which is just a good again life lesson of you don't want to judge someone when you first see them, and everyone's coming through their own lives with their own backgrounds and their own pasts and their own reasons for doing things, even if they're a jerk. Sometimes it's not there are reasons behind that. I just like that message of the movie so much.
Yeah. And on that revealing part, which again I think can go wrong in my mind pretty badly, which is that it becomes like, oh, he's like this because of that. Oh, he's like this because this thing happened to him earlier. which might be the truth, but I don't know, it can sort of feel shallow and hollow. Versus here, you sort of the reveals happen the way they would in real life, right? Like if I met you and felt that you were annoying, and then for some reason I just kept hanging out with you for whatever
This
reason.
is what happened, by the way. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I start to see other things, not because we sat down and I asked you that, oh, tell me, why are you the way you are? No,
Right.
that's not how life happens. People just go about doing things in their lives, and then other people get to observe that and start to see more about them. And so the movie is sort of doing that actually, which I think is the genius of the script and these three great performances, and of course, the direction.
Yeah, exactly. And I think on the direction side of it too, I loved how they set this movie in the early 70s, I think 1970, 1971, and
Mm-hmm.
they made the movie look like it was made in that year too. They added film grain. Actually, this movie was shot digitally, which
Mm-hmm.
is crazy to me. And apparently Alexander Payne and the DP realized that to get the look of the 70s movies, they couldn't use film because that film stock didn't exist anymore. And actually, it was easier to recreate it digitally than it was to track down this stock and get it developed and all these sort of things. And I just love, again, not only the look of the film visually, but some of the editing techniques. There's that amazing zoom when Paul Giamatti's like walking out, like,
Yeah.
screen for Sessa's character. And it's just like this quick zoom out. It's just amazing. Like the movie does feel like 1971. Not that I lived in that time. I'm not that old. I'm old, but not that old. But I like the movies around that time. I think Payne does a great job of, and his DP of recreating that vibe. It's just fantastic. And also, I think this might be the first time Alexander Payne has not had a hand on the screenplay of any movie that he's done, which was surprising to me that he's still. This feels so much like his movie and his voice and his worldview when
Yeah.
he did not get credit on the screenplay, which is pretty, I guess, cool. Just
Yeah.
interesting.
I'm sure he has a big role to play in there, but maybe just not directly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your number two.
Well, that was my number two. So now it's back to you. What is your number two?
So my number two is May December, directed by Todd Haynes, starring Natalie Portman and Charles Melton and Julianne Moore. Like logline on the movie, 20 years after their notorious tabloid romance gripped the nation, a married couple buckles under pressure when an actress arrives to do research for a film about their past. So I think people who listen to me on this podcast already know that I'm a big Todd Haynes fan, and when I read about this subject matter and this cast, I was excited but also very nervous because just this subject matter is just so gross and horrifying. And then all these reports started to come from Cannes that, oh, it's campy and it's funny and all of that. And then I watched it and I was just completely blown away by what they're able to do in this movie, which I think is probably the most delicate dance of tone I've seen in a movie across all departments. It's in the script, it's in the performances, of course, it's in Todd Haynes. And it's such a tightly packed package of that because you sort of literally walk in on eggshells, with the subject matter. And if you're just a little bit over, the thing just totally falls apart. And the movie just a great job in exploring all these layers with these three main characters where you think you are with Natalie and she's entering this world where a crime has happened and you want her to learn more and do a good job. And then you start to see that she's not blame free either. She's exploiting what has happened in this place and with these two people. So there's that happening in parallel. And the movie has some really interesting takes on, celebrity and the art and craft of performance and what you do with it and how far will you go. And probably one of the reasons why this movie didn't get too many nominations in my view, because I think it sort of pokes at that. So there's that aspect of the movie, which honestly on its own would be an amazing movie. Then on top of that, you get whatever is happening between Julianne Moore and Charles Melton, which is amazing, absolutely. Where how do you even explain the psychology of this crime, right? Of this older woman who did this to a child and now has this life with this person, and what is going on over there, how she's like uber feminine and baby like and is almost like a victim in her own mind, that her prince sort of saved her and that's how she's justified this whole thing, which again, of course it's a crime, but it's just done so deftly, and Julianne Moore is so great in it that you kind of you are curious, you know. I wouldn't go far as saying I empathize. I can't, but I'm at least curious, and I'm not sort of like, oh my gosh, I can't even watch this. I can't even look at it, like, because it's done with humanity. Like that's the thing. Like these are all humans who did this, and then Charles, who for most of the movie is sort of a dead shell of a person who's this, young guy trapped in a body of an older man with a younger brain. Like there's so much of confusion happening, right? Arrested development. But then in the back of the movie, it becomes his movie because you start to see that actually the casualty of all of this from both women's points of views and what they've done, he's a victim of all of that. And that great scene of the kids, their kids, Julian and Charles Melton's kids going to graduation, is sort of this moment that, oh my gosh, this is what my life is going to be now. I'm here now. What am I supposed to do? And what's going to happen with me? It's just so layered and detailed, but it's not a drag. It's not preachy. It's fun. It's funny. It's just so clever, so intelligent. So just this movie just absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of this movie too. I mean, if this is a year, like we had said at the beginning, is sort of
Yeah.
a spoil of riches. Like there's so many movies in 2023. My top 10 are all like 4 to 5 star movies, and this one definitely would be in my top 10. I'm also a huge fan of Todd Haynes, and I was also blown away by this film. I think the key thing about this movie, which, like you said, is in the performances, the directing, and the script, is you don't really know where your allegiance lies as an audience, and it shifts
Hmm.
throughout the film. And you're really left at the end being like, well, who is exploiting who here of these three main characters? And it really is the boy who's now the husband and father, I think ends up taking over the second half of the film, like you said, and is really just tragic to see his life be stolen
Hmm.
by Julianne Moore, who, you know, was a predator essentially
Hmm.
on this child. Even though in the beginning you think, oh, they're in love, and like, okay, you
Right.
understand why he would probably do this and why she would do this, and it's hard, you don't want to judge other people's love, but this is like an adult and a child. And for me, the most powerful scene in the film was when Melton was on the roof with
Oh
one of his
yeah.
sons, and they're smoking
Amazing.
weed, and he just sort of breaks down and realizes, like, oh my God, like what happened to my life?
Yeah.
Like I'm a child still. Like there was this Arrested Development, like you said, because of what happened to me, and how can I be a dad, and how can you be graduating already, and what was taken away? And you just see this one scene. I mean, obviously he's under the influence of weed, but also just with Melton's acting
Hmm.
is incredible. And you see him totally break down, and that's in the movie at the point of the movie where I'm like, wow, like he really is the victim here. And it was a really heart-wrenching scene. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get any nominations,
Yeah.
honestly, or none of these actors did. I think they were all definitely deserving it. And Natalie Portman, who she's amazing in some things and not amazing in other
Yeah,
things.
I'm with you.
But man, was she
She was
really,
amazing.
really good in this. I mean, her character too, you think is completely sympathetic. And then at the very end, you realize like she's exploiting this whole situation to produce like basically a Lifetime movie. And it's
Yeah,
not even like
it's not even good.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone made some point online that she's only good when she's playing like bad actors, like in Black Swan too, where like,
Yeah.
she's also playing like, someone who's not very, very good. But no, I love this movie. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, there's something meta about that as well, which is so clever, right? That the movie's playing on Natalie's persona of this kind of baby voice sort of thing, and but a smart, intelligent person who really comes at acting and craft and all of that. I mean, that's the perception we have. I mean, who knows how these people are in real life? And even Julianne, like her like cry has been memified, right? Like,
Yes.
and she gets plenty of those in this movie. So it's just so fun in that. And maybe that's why the movie is labeled as camp, because it's so self-aware in that sense. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the key part of the self-awareness, because I've talked to people who are like, how can you say this is a comedy? How do you think it's funny? Which I found this film very funny, even though it
Yeah.
does touch on some really dark things. But for me, it's the music that is
Yeah.
so overly dramatic and
Yeah.
like a soap opera, and it just comes in at these moments that I couldn't help but laugh when you're
Exactly.
watching it. And I think, Haynes knows what he's doing. They know what they're doing. They're trying to introduce some, I don't want to say like levity, but this camp style in here, but not make it overwhelming. It's still
Hmm.
a very serious topic that they're treating with respect, but they can't if you delved into this too much, it'd be too depressing and hard to watch. I mean, it's
Yeah.
about, again, child predators, like,
Yeah.
pedophiles essentially, and those are some of the darkest topics you can touch in any form of art. But this movie is funny. It's fun. I
Yeah.
don't, weird way. I just find it to be that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I guess we should mention some of the mirror scenes as well, which is the
Oh yeah.
cornerstone of this movie of like how the two actors are kind of becoming each other and the work that they put in the movie as actresses so that Natalie could easily mimic things like all the lisp and all of
Oh
this was
yeah.
all invented by Julianne. Like this is amazing. It's not in the script. She did all this so that Natalie would have like tangible things that she can sort of mimic. And then of course the camera and Todd captures that. We see that. We are looking at them while they're looking at each other. There's just something so powerful about that. And that's the genius of Todd Haynes, right? That this movie could be like a simple TV movie, but it's
Oh yeah.
cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
Totally cinematic in my mind.
Yeah, the lisp thing was crazy too
Yeah.
because I didn't even realize Julianne Moore was doing a lisp until Natalie Portman was impersonating her with the lisp. And was like, oh, wait a second, does she have a lisp? And all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, she does. So
Yeah.
it's like Julianne Moore's lisp was so natural. I didn't even pick
Yeah.
up on it. But then when the actor is coming in trying to personify the character, she's
Yeah.
over exaggerating just that extra 5% where all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, why does she have a lisp? This is weird. I'm like, oh my God. Like the whole time. And again, this all these performances. But yeah, the mirror scenes are really just showing just what that Todd is elevating the material to a level that only he can do with this kind
Totally.
of thing. It's like the perfect. And actually, speaking of like the screenplay too, which I think is so definitely handled as well. Is this the first time Todd Haynes has directed someone else's work entirely?
He's been doing this lately, like Dark Waters is not written
Oh,
by
it wasn't. Okay,
him.
okay,
And so he's
okay.
been doing this a little bit. And it's kind of fun to see him in this role because
Yeah.
otherwise everything that he's done has been written by him. So I kind of love that.
Me too. And I
Yeah.
guess like Alexander Payne in the last
Yeah.
movie we
Same
covered,
thing.
it's fun to see these auteur directors just be directors. I feel like nowadays
Mm-hmm.
most auteurs are writer directors, like a P.T. Anderson, Greta Gerwig,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Nolan, like they do both.
Mm-hmm.
But in the old days, like Hitchcock didn't write anything, but
Right.
he's still an auteur.
Yeah.
Kubrick didn't write all of his films. I mean, some of them he had a major hand on the screenplay, but not every single one. But he still has a vision, and I just like that these directors are kind of stretching themselves in a way and taking other people's work that they connect with, but it still feels like their work.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Really,
Great
really,
film.
really, really great.
Available on Netflix, so anyone who's listening can easily, if they have Netflix, easily go and stream it. It's definitely something that I think got overlooked in the Oscars this year a lot. It should have had more
Yeah.
juice. In a year that wasn't as strong, I think this is just a year again of spoil of riches. In another year, this would have gotten all the top, acting nominations and
Yeah.
director, screenwriter, all that kind of stuff.
I think so too. All right. Number ones.
Yeah, so let's go to my number one first. So my number one is Oppenheimer, the movie that just, I guess my number one is the same as the Academy's, that just won Best Picture tonight. But we actually have our next episode, which is coming next Wednesday, is going to be on Oppenheimer and Christopher Nolan, much like we covered Villeneuve and Dune Part 2. So we'll talk more about Oppenheimer in our next episode. So maybe this is a teaser for that, other than just to say, again, I was blown away by the film, huge Nolan fan, and I think he really outdone himself with this work. And I think this is a movie that he deserved to win the Oscar for. And I'm glad that he did tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Now, excited to kind of get into the movie more. I'm kind of tempted to watch it again now. I
Oh,
only seen it the once. I mean, I know you've seen it
I
like
saw it 3 times in the
yeah,
theater, 1 time on video, and actually, yeah, after tonight, I'm like, I want to watch it this week. Like, I
yeah,
just want to be back in that world. Definitely gonna be listening to the soundtrack tonight when I'm driving
yeah,
home.
yeah, 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 for sure, for sure.
So again, that's a tease for our next episode. We'll get more into Oppenheimer then, but let's move on then to your number one. What's your number one movie of 2023?
Okay, so my number one is Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, Robert De Niro, with logline. When oil is discovered in 1920s Oklahoma under Osage Nation land, the Osage people are murdered one by one until the FBI steps in to unravel the mystery. So this is, obviously a 4 hour long movie. Much has been said about that. But when I think about the year, a year of great movies, like we've been saying, the movie that had probably stayed in my mind the most is this one. And I think that has to do with a few things. Of course, the subject matter of it and how they've handled it, and a lot that, of course, I, as someone who was not born in this country, I'm aware of it, but not to this detail and this degree, to this degree. So that's a huge part of it, obviously. But I think the cornerstone of the movie really are Marty, of course, like mounting a movie like this of this scale, which is sort of like, the Giant, the George Stevens movie. It kind of reminds me of that sort of an epic, right? And so doing that at this stage of his career, at this age, and realizing it just so fully, that's a huge cornerstone of the movie, I think. Number two, the performances, especially Lily Glassman's performance, all three leads are absolutely incredible. But there's something just so haunting and lived in where this is not an idiot character who doesn't know what is happening. This character knows what is.
DiCaprio's character.
I mean, Lily
Oh,
Gladstone.
Lily Gladstone.
Like,
Okay, okay.
because you could say that, oh, this person, why is she with him? Why did, she had the resources or she could have done something. Granted, she's been drugged and such throughout the movie, but you see, I think the love and the relationship between those two people, which is sort of what they reoriented the entire movie to be about, is sort of the secret weapon of the movie. There's no question in my mind. Like the movie that will not be as epic and great and moving and haunting without that. And I think it's because of her performance, where you see the genuine care and love she has, but also this question and fear for her life, fear for her people, fear for her whole family, which is kind of fallen apart, literally dropping like flies in front of her. And then the third cornerstone, I guess, is Leo and De Niro. I put them on the same sort of bracket. It's because of the evil that De Niro brings in, and then the banality of evil, I guess that DiCaprio brings in, because he genuinely is an idiot character who just doesn't know and is driven by very simple means, is totally manipulated by his uncle, played by De Niro, is actually in love with Lily Gladstone. And I just think all these relationships and complexities are just so beautifully handled. And again, you could be telling a very important story of a different time of our times, but when it's film, it has to be about characters and the motivations between them. And the more complex and real you make them, the richer the movie's going to be, the richer the subtext is going to be. And I think this movie has all of that. And then on top of all of this, you add all the departments that are at play, from the music to the set design and these practical sets that were created and this costumes, and you're completely transported to this world back in time, and it's all real, the stakes are palpable. And then I guess the last thing I would say is the ending of the movie. For anyone who's not watched the movie, maybe you should skip this part, but I think ending the movie in this kind of radio program and Marty kind of making an appearance and saying what he does is just so moving. And I don't want to say too much about the whole discourse of like who should be telling what story, and we're all kind of complicit in the evils that were committed in some way or the other. Agreed. But I think to me, it's more about that this person who's had this amazing body of work for all these years can redefine the way he tells stories. And at this time in his life, that's the part I take away from this. Um, and the fact that, if you're telling a good story, that story can come from anywhere. This doesn't have to be the definitive story of this subject matter. And if anything, I hope that this movie and this story has shed light on many such movies to be made, many such stories about these people from before times or today's times be told. I love that, so yeah, it's kind of a masterpiece and a masterwork, that I hope to watch over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, I also love this movie. This almost was my number three. It was really hard for me to kind of
Yeah.
narrow this list down to three. I mean, I definitely second everything you just said. I think Marty has had such an amazing body of work, always dealing with this, darker parts of
Mhm.
America, usually through city life and through his gangster pictures or his,
Mhm.
his other pictures about sort of the, what America represents, American capitalism, et cetera. And I think turning his lens to the Native American genocide that is part of this country's history was just the perfect. He was in a way like a great storyteller to tell this story on the grand scale that he did. And I think that ending in the movie that you referenced too really just like shocked me. And
Mhm.
everyone in the theater when I saw this over the week, I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And I think Marty especially stepping out there too and sort of explaining, I don't want to say like apologizing for the fact that he made the movie, but sort of saying, look, I'm an artist, this is my vision.
Right.
I chose to tell this story, which is a very bold move to make and something that I don't think if he had made this movie 10, 20, 30 years ago, he would have done. And I like the fact that at this part of his career, he's able to make turn the lens even on himself and be like, look, like I'm just a storyteller here. This is the best that, that I can do here. It doesn't mean this is the definitive version of this story or that other people can't tell the story from different perspectives. It's just my perspectives and auteur, and I'm bringing it to this tale. And I'm glad that he did, because I don't think anyone else could have done what he did with this movie, because
No.
he's Marty Scorsese. But yeah, like the direction really impressed me, but definitely the acting. And I think what you were touching on about the complexity of these characters. I mean, this could have been a story very easily told of all these bad, white settlers are coming in and exterminating the Native Americans and tricking them and all these things. But when you look at the story, even like looking up the description on Wikipedia, it's like you do ask, like, wait, how did this happen? Like, how did these Native women get bamboozled by these guys marrying and killing them all off? It's like there must be something else going on there. And that's what Lily and Leo and then Marty are trying to do through these performances, where they are in love.
Mm-hmm.
And even Lily's in love with Leo, and it's not until that amazing scene at the end where she
Right.
was like, "Did you actually poison me?" And once he refuses to admit that he does, and then she realizes, "Well, I'm out." Like that was the last straw for her, even though for some reason the last straw wasn't poisoning her or killing her family, like because there was genuine love there. And I think the complexities of that, this story, really Marty was able to capture that in a way that other filmmakers couldn't, or Leo or Lily, I think too. Like they're the
Mm-hmm.
perfect people to tell this story, because you're there sort of understanding why it's happening, even though you don't quite understand, but at the same time you do. It's just incredible. And then to juxtapose that to De Niro's character, who, I mean, what a performance from him this late in his career. I mean, just the most evil guy, because he's so casual about it. He's
Right.
not like sitting there, like twisting his mustache, like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna get rid of all these natives and take all their money. It's just he's so casual. He's in every scene, and he's such a nice guy, and just moving around. But every move that he makes is a move where he's just trying to destroy this native community and just steal all of their wealth. But he does it with a smile in a way, and it's just a incredibly evil but amazing performance by him. It's just fascinating. And just juxtapose that against what Leo's doing. It just, yeah, it's those shades that you mentioned earlier, the complexities behind the story. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I didn't speak much about De Niro, but yeah, like you said, it's so great to see him come back and do something like this.
Yeah.
It's kind of, we've talked about this before, like Raging Bull or Sophie's Choice, where you see the actor as the character thinking and plotting or what have you, totally inhabiting. I think that's what De Niro does,
Mm-hmm.
where you can almost see like two faces. Like he's totally present. He's there at every event and he's the nice guy. He's
Right.
still the village elder that everybody kind of looks up to, but you can see the menace and the calculation. And you can see the lived in nature of that. It's not something that just happened. He didn't wake up one morning. This has been going on for a while. And he's
Mm-hmm.
built on top of that. And then you see the cookie crumble when it does, because he can feel it. And in a weird way, again, not to use the word empathy, because of course he's a horrible character that you can't really empathize. He's a criminal basically, but you sort of see from a human standpoint that, oh, for somebody who's built this whole thing, if when it does go away, how would that feel? Because
Right.
that emotion is human.
Mm-hmm.
Whether what you built is good or bad, when it's taken away, it is going to suck.
Exactly.
And you see that. So
Yeah, and I think this was for me a performance of De Niro where he's actually like terrifying, and he
yeah.
hasn't done that. I mean, actually, we touched on Analyze This in a previous episode that I think was sort of the beginning of him moving fully into comedy.
Right.
And in that movie, he definitely was a bit terrifying in the parts, even though he's playing like a mob boss who's, it's a comedy with Billy Crystal, but you're like, oh, this guy actually could kill someone in this movie if he wanted to.
Right.
And since then, I feel like I haven't felt that from him. But in Killers of Flower Moon, this guy is like the real deal, sort of like bad guy. It just, I'd like to see this De Niro back. It's nice to
Yeah.
see that he can still pull this off after like 20 years of not the best career. I haven't been a big fan of the late stage of his career, but it's nice to see him back together with Marty, with Leo, and being able to pull off something like this is just incredible. So I definitely want to shout out to him.
Yeah. Any honorable mentions? I know it's such a great year in movies, but any others that you want to give a shout out to that you loved?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's so many. I think another one that was hard not to put on the list is Zone of Interest.
Same.
Definitely a movie that affected me and thought about it for days, weeks afterwards. I've only seen it once. I don't know if I'll be able to tackle it again because it is such a hard and harrowing subject. But I highly recommend that film. I think that one, could have made it in here in a year that wasn't so
Yeah.
competitive. That's probably the other one for me that was tough not to include. What about you?
Yeah, that one for me too. I didn't put Oppenheimer on my list because I know, and you have it on your list. We're going to talk about it more, as Alex teased, and it's definitely in my top five. But Zone of Interest is kind of in a different category. And then I thought Anatomy of a Fall was amazing as well. Fun, but a lot of depth. So hopefully we get a chance to talk about these movies in time.
Yeah. Oh, and another one too. I should mention that I liked a lot too. The Fincher movie from last
Oh
year,
yeah.
The Killer. I saw that 3 times in a week actually, because I knew there was something to this that was a little more complex than what it put on, and after three, it opened up to me after 3 viewings. So that was another one that I just really enjoyed. A lot of my favorite filmmakers actually last year came back with films, and except for Napoleon, I think every single one, when Ridley Scott, I think every single one of them just delivered for me at least. But it was an amazing year, just an amazing year. Maybe we should have done a top 10.
I know.
We should have the time.
All right. Well, that's our episode on the year 2023. Fun to be recording this in person right after watching the Oscars. Alex made amazing cookies that were inspired by all the Best Picture nominees.
And my sister made them with me, so shout out to her.
So we really enjoyed that.
Glad you enjoyed them.
On to a next chapter of in movies with this year.
Yeah, and like we were teasing, the next episode will be next Wednesday on Oppenheimer and Christopher Nolan's career. And yeah, Karan, thanks for hosting me at your house for Oscars. You've been a great meal. It was a lot of fun watching it. We the first time we ever watched Oscars in person together. Usually we're texting feverishly back and forth, with snark and comments, and it was nice to do all the snark and comments in person.
Right.
We'll hope you enjoyed the discussion today. Let us know what you thought of the Oscars in comments below, and also what were your top movies of 2023. And we're available on all podcast platforms and YouTube, where you can find reviews of all of the movies we've covered. So please make sure to rate and review us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast feed, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Until next time.
It's the Oscars. Bye.
Goodbye.